Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? I hope you're doing well. We have a special tonight on a very important thing that's coming up here in Washington State, and I'm very excited to have Richard on from Civil War Seattle, one of the uh, one of the men behind the scenes who's been working hard on this and keeping it quiet for a very long time. In fact, I didn't know anything about it until very recently. So, Richard, thank you for being on, my friend.
Yeah, well, thanks for helping kind of launch the public announcement of this thing. It's not that it's entirely top secret, but there's, like you said, been a lot of behind the scenes work, and I think finally everything was lined up to get this thing active and get this thing going. So it's time to let everybody know about it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that, and I know a few of my listeners saw the announcement. Actually, a few hundred saw the announcement, and they were like, "Wow, that's going to be impressive." I definitely want to see the video live when we're doing this, or they want to see the video on demand. So we want to give them as much information as we can and tell
Yeah,
them about how this all came about and things like that. So
yeah,
let's start from the top, Richard. You
yeah.
being known far and wide in Washington for Civil War Seattle and the Seattle history tours. How did this all come about for you personally, knowing that this was going to occur?
Uh, well, I was so the organization that's putting this together, both elements of it. In fact, the funeral home that's hosting the event, and then the Missing in America project, both of which I've worked with on things in the past, or I've gone to their events, and I've just gotten to know a lot of the people involved in leadership at the Evergreen Washelli Cemetery, and then with the Missing in America folks. So this topic with the Missing in America project is something that we've kind of woven in and out of over the past few years. You know, when they hit a wall, or they have a question or something, they'd say, "Oh, hey, Richard, can you help us out with this? Can you tell us this? Or do you know where we can find this? Or have you ever heard of this guy? Like, we think he might be." Just that, always bouncing stuff off one another for a couple years now.
Right.
I've attended a lot of their events for veterans of other conflicts that they've done this same thing. Missing in America Project is a national organization, so they're constantly at work on this all over. But normally it's veterans of the First World War, Second World War,
Mm.
peacetime service. Spanish American War veterans are still frequently located. So there hasn't been a lot of opportunity for me to really be too hands-on with them. It's just kind of here and there kind of stuff. Or I'll ask them, like, "Hey, here's a name of a person that I'd love to finish their story, and I don't know what happened to them. Is this somebody that you've encountered?" So we've had a lot of back and forth, dialogue that way, and going to events, and they've come to some headstone dedications that we've had, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Um, and then Evergreen Washelli Cemetery, they have hosted events for Missing in America in the past. 2 years ago, just about 2 years ago in 2022, they hosted one that was for 99 veterans and spouses of a wide range of conflicts, from the Spanish American War through, I believe, the Korean War. So they come
Mm.
out in batches like that. They work for a couple years. They get everything organized. They go through all the process with the custody and all the legal things that are involved with placing these remains, and then going through the process of getting it approved with the Veterans Administration, which is a whole nother labyrinth process. So it takes a long time for them to accumulate a group. It wasn't really until a few months ago, I guess, that I heard from Missing in America. The people that I know there contacted me, and they just said, "Hey, we're working on something, and we could use your expertise on helping us out with this as we go, especially as we get to the public side of it. Like
Mm.
that's what you do. Can you be the voice for this when the time comes?" So that email literally came on the same day as that they had contacted Evergreen Washelli and said, "Hey, this is what we got coming down the pipe. Can we do this again like we did 2 years ago?" And then they turned around and emailed me and said, "Hey, we got this thing coming up. We'd like to bring you in to consult and help us out with this." And the historical accuracy of how these kind of events would have happened in the Grand Armée, all that stuff. So both of them came from either side and just clamped down on me on the same day and said, "We need you as the consulting historian on all this."
Wow.
And I said, "Yeah, look, what do you need me to do? Just tell me what you want from this and from me, and I'm an open book."
Mm-hmm.
And then this has continued on. Most of what I've done is for the memorial service, because of the legalities of the remains and stuff. That Missing in America has really had to keep a pretty tight amount of confidentiality around the specific veterans and spouses' identities.
Mm-hmm.
So that has been handled internally for the most part by them, as far as verifying service and who these individuals are. And then now, as we lead up into it, now I get to find out who they are, take some of these stories, and really bring them to the public. And then and then there's a huge amount of work as far as the event itself, with Evergreen Washelli. And then when it's over with, then we'll have all of these veteran stories to tell for years to come, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still going to be an ongoing process. It doesn't end just on the 21st, but that's really the big turning point in it, is getting to the point where they're remembered and commemorated and then buried with full national military honors from there. So I'm just kind of fitting in where they need me to fit in. But it's, again, I've known these folks and had a great relationship with them for a long time. They know and trust what I do, and that we're a good match, that we won't have any conflict of trying to, put somebody plant their flag on it and say, "Oh, this is my brand. I want to do whatever." And everybody's working together, and everybody's going to be a part of this, and have equity in the process and equity in the sharing of the stories. And we hope that the public in general feels that equity in their involvement in it too, that they can come in and be there for the day, or they can go to the cemetery, or they can contribute flowers if you can't come in person, that kind of thing. That was from the start, is try to make this as much as we can for everybody, but keep control of everything that needs to be controlled throughout the process.
Yes, thank you to everyone who's joining us right now. Please, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, there is a link in the chat to civilwarseattle.com/memorial, and you'll get more information there. Richard was kind enough to promote that on his page, and make sure that you have as much information as possible there about what we'll talk about here in a few moments, with what you can do to help out with this. Richard, I definitely want to ask you one thing, because we both are on parallel courses with this kind of thing. We both are doing what some have termed e-history, or we get labeled just as content creators, or whatever the case may be, where we're doing history online. What was it like getting the call to help out with this, as someone who has been doing this for a little while, but has had some moments in the past where people didn't take you seriously? Was it something nice to be like, wow, okay, we're this brand is being taken seriously, and I get to do something that's very worthy of, well, I shouldn't say worthy, but in a way to give back to the men and women who I've talked about for years in a very a beautiful way, really.
Sure. Yeah. I think, it was an honor, of course, but I felt like to me, it felt like I guess, harvesting the fruit that I've been tending and growing over the past several years, in a way, that it comes from competency in what I do, and the relationships between the people. That's something I take very, very, very seriously, and being patient with relationships, and not gatekeeping, and not being combative with people, that sort of stuff. And then you build relationships that when things come up, that people can team up on and work together to provide the best products, no matter where you come from. It's, as long as you handle yourself professionally and with pride in what you do, and fairness with other people, and without expectation. You wind up in the place where you get to be the person that people call, because they
Mhm.
trust you and they know what you want to do, and that feels good. That's always been my intent from the start. This whole thing started several years ago as a simple Facebook page, like, hey, this is kind of cool. This guy fought with my third great grandfather at Fredericksburg, and let me make a little post about his story. But as I've gone on, I thought, I'm getting traction enough with this that I should take this seriously. There's a clear and present need and appetite for the history that I'm presenting.
Right.
And I started off with some pretty rough edges, and I've learned a ton. I like to say I've gotten my graduate degree over the past half a decade in this stuff, just by practical experience,
Mhm.
whether it's written work or public history, or out on the street being a tour guide, or having communications committee meetings with a multinational corporation that runs 4,000 cemeteries around the world. Like,
Yeah.
I had to climb that ladder to get there. You couldn't call me 5 years ago and ask me to do this. It's really a process of relationships and working and trust to try the next thing. And then all of a sudden you go, wow, okay, I guess I'm the guy for the job. That's cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
Let me show you what I have for you. Is how it felt, and I think it's the right timing for me personally to be involved with this, because I just
Mhm.
have enough perspective as to doing these sort of projects, seeing them done by other people, learning the history, learning how to present history successfului
Mhm.
to the public, whether it's video or writing or in person or whatever. And that it takes a lot of time. And then, you know, it's nice to just sit back and think, all right, I don't know where I'm at, but everybody else thinks that uh, I can handle the responsibilities for this. And
Right.
so far so good. And it's really, everything's lining up that we're going to have a very successful event out of this. I believe, from everybody's efforts. I'm proud to be involved in it. I'm proud to play my role as the consulting historian on all of this, but that's one of many pieces of this whole thing. And it's really nice to be trusted with that responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it's a great honor that you'll never forget.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Um,
Yeah, for
uh,
sure.
I I would love to share some photos with everyone who's coming in and clicking on civilwarseattle.com/memorial and seeing the news at the bottom of the screen. 30 Union Civil War veterans and 31 spouses to be inurned, and we're going to talk about that over the next
Yeah.
45 minutes or so. But I would love to show some visuals because I'm all about visual learning. So I would like to add some photos to this that Richard kindly sent along to me. Richard, what are we looking at in this first photo?
Yeah, so the number one question. So I will say these photos come from the volunteers at Missing in America Project. That's the source of these photos. This is not the work that I do. This is the work that they do. This is what we're looking at here, and this really answers the primary question: is how the heck did you come up with 30 plus remains of Union soldiers from the Civil War? How is that even possible? And this photo illustrates how that happens. These are not, battlefield bodies that were found by ground penetrating radar, or depression in the ground, or the rain swept away an embankment or something like that. And there's been wonderful stories like that over the years in South Carolina, and even in
Mhm.
Gettysburg in the last 25 years, and Antietam, I believe, in other places where remains are found that were never removed from the battlefield. This is an entirely different situation. These are men and women who survived the war, and then went on to have long and complete lives elsewhere, away from the battlefields of the Civil War, and they were cremated after that. That was their final wishes, is to be cremated. And it's an unfortunately common scenario where cremated remains are left unclaimed, or perhaps they are put in what they call a temporary storage, where at the time, in say 1920 or whatever, they'll pay like a $2 fee to the funeral home or the crematorium to hold the remains, and then they never get picked up, or the family never picks them up, or the children live somewhere else and they just get forgotten about. And what happens is, year after year after year after year of this, they accumulate in funeral home and crematorium and cemetery storage space. And that's what this photo is. This is a storage vault in an area, cemetery or a funeral home. I don't even know which one this photograph is, because, like I said, there's a very serious amount of confidentiality that goes into this work on their behalf. So I couldn't tell you which one this is. This is one in the Seattle area somewhere, and you can see there's all different shapes. There's like copper round containers that are holding ashes. There's small boxes. There's cardboard boxes. There's actual urns. Ceramic urns. Each one of those has the cremated remains of some person, and on the outside, in most cases, will have a label with the name on it. So that's how they verify. So they're, they don't have to go and do a DNA test from the ash or a bone fragment in the thing. They are labeled on the exteriors. Sometimes the exteriors get damaged, and we have no idea whose they are. There is no legal obligation for the cemeteries or the funeral homes to maintain these. It's 45 days was the legal statute that any cemetery or funeral home has to legally maintain those cremains or ashes. After 45 days, the funeral home, the facility has the legal right to dispose of them. And they can do it individually. They could dump them all in one box and put them in a hole and stick a cross on it. They could throw them in the river. Doesn't matter. They don't have to maintain them. But the people that I have talked to, the general manager at Evergreen Washelli, for example, he said, it's the ethical obligation of the cemeterians if they want to maintain these or not. And over the generations, the ethics of those that operate these places have maintained their existence and said, we don't want to just throw these in the garbage can. We don't want to just dump these in the river. We really do. We'd rather hold them. And that becomes a burden on these facilities. As these cemeteries fill, especially these old historic ones, they need the space. They need a room to put the next generation of people that are being cremated into storage, or that want to pay for this small space, perpetual care, that kind of thing. So it's a delicate balance. And so that's where Missing in America project, they created a niche because that the federal government will provide an honorable burial for any honorably discharged United States veteran in a national cemetery. Spouses, and then individuals that died as dependent children of a veteran or a spouse, not an adult child, but if you died as a 7-year-old, then you're eligible. So what they do is they do the research, they do all the negotiations, they have all the legal team behind it, and then they work to apply for that status with the Veterans Administration, or work with individual families as well. But the veteran aspect and what veterans are legally awarded through the U.S. government is what allows them to be able to take them and bring them out and give them over to the U.S. government to then bury. So you can't just hire Missing in America to go in and find great-great-grandmom who might be in there somewhere. There's a specific pipeline that this happens through, and it's a very, very delicate. Speaking of delicate relationships, for a cemetery or a funeral home to open up a space like this for people to come in and work patiently, one box at a time. Who's the name? Match it to a death certificate and family records and marriage certificates and birth certificates and all this. It's a massive amount of labor, and it requires a lot of relationship building and patience and care to do this. And so, again, to have a group of 30 veterans of the Civil War that have now been assembled, and they said, okay, now we can move forward with this specific group. These are different than the mishmash of all the other conflicts. Like, Civil War veterans don't show up in other places like this. And we can talk about that in a moment too. The specific reason is why we're finding them here. Why don't you go into a crematorium in Boston and find 130 Civil War veterans in the storage. There are reasons for that, why they're even lurking around in the shadows on shelves here. That makes it
Why is that? You might as well fill us
yeah.
in,
So
because that's a major part of this, because
yeah,
you don't think about this happening in your area if you're like on the East Coast or anything, like
yeah.
you say, Boston or Pittsburgh or wherever.
Yeah, and it's not to say that it doesn't. You know, Missing in America project is all over the nation, and they
Right.
do find them occasionally. Um, but the major driving force in this, and this is what I've gotten from the cemeterians here in Seattle, speak when I ask these questions, why are we finding them? The best answer I was given was from Scott Sheehan at Evergreen Washelli, who's their general manager, but he's very, very acute with the history of the facilities around here, and he said that cremation as a widespread practice really expanded, took root and expanded here in the Pacific Northwest and in Seattle specifically much earlier than it did around the nation. That's true in 1910, and it's true today. He said the average currently in 2024, the current average of people that choose cremation after death is at a rate of about 50% nationwide.
Wow.
He said here in Seattle, we exceed 80% of people that
Wow.
choose cremation here. It's almost, essentially, it's almost unanimous here. There may be stricter religious obligations that people choose not to. That maybe accounts for the 20%, but 80% of people at this time. So he said, if you go back to the 1920s, the cremation rate in Seattle is close to 50% of people that are dying in 1920, before it's even a common practice anywhere.
That's huge.
And he said that his feeling is because it's a new city, it's an immigrant city, it's people leaving behind their communities and their communities' ethics and morals and things. And he even mentioned, and I agree too, that the religious underpinnings are swept away a little bit when they come to Seattle. Seattle's not a religious city. It never has been, like most of our Pacific Coast cities. And so early on, a practice like cremation gets a foothold years ahead of a city like Boston with a large, Catholic majority, which is not going to take to cremation as a practice, or other places. So there's some societal aspects to it too. And he really supposed, and I agree, that these people coming here, younger age, a little bit, thinking differently than their parents' generation, not being in such a structured and generations deep environment for death and burial practice, that something that's more forward like that found roots here. And so the crematoriums here in Seattle that were really operating at a pretty good clip by 1910, which is way, way ahead of the curve for cremation, became a focal point for all over. So you go through these, this picture above us here, if you look, you'll find people that didn't die just in Seattle, but died in Alaska and died in British Columbia and died in Oregon and died all over Washington, that their remains were sent here to be cremated. And they might be some of the ones in storage too. So this isn't specifically a Seattle thing, but Seattle was kind of a focal point for this practice. And still to this day it is. And there's a lot of innovative, I guess, practices like that. I don't know the ins and outs of the newer forms of it. There's like one that's done with something that has to do with hydrogen and water or something like that, that are what the practice of these new ways of doing that kind of thing, not just incineration, but in cremation, but other ways, are also becoming pretty embraced widely here. So it's a cultural and social thing. And so this generation, when the Civil War veterans are dying in the 19-teens and the 1920s, they're not being cremated in Boston or Pittsburgh or Virginia or Florida or Maine. But here in the Pacific Coast, people dying in 1909, 1910, 1920 have a 50-50 chance of being cremated. So we have earlier massive amounts of cremated remains than anywhere else, generally speaking. These are very general. Don't quote me on any of this, but that's the framework behind, wow, how can you find 30 Civil War veterans that died in the 19-teens?
Hmm.
because they didn't go into the ground. Everywhere else, those bones go into the ground. Here,
Mhm.
there's a likelihood that they don't, and that's what
Mhm.
these veterans were choosing for their final wishes in a lot of cases.
Right. Wow. Yeah, it's really interesting looking at a photo like this and realizing that every box, every canister is a biography, and you
Yeah,
you studying individuals. Maybe once in a while you come across someone in there who maybe you didn't study them, but you studied someone who was in that unit
yeah,
or whatever, and you kind of have
yeah,
a kinship with this with
yeah.
this person who's right here.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I'll tell you a really funny anecdote, very fresh. This happened this morning. They sent me a photograph of some other stuff related to this, and I saw a name in the photograph on an urn that I know. I know the family. And I
Mm,
said, that I know that one. It's not a veteran, but it's a very early pioneer. It was the first child born in the town that I live in, who is
wow.
of a Civil War veteran family. His father was in the 14th Pennsylvania Cavalry, and I saw the name on the urn, and I went, "Oh my God,
Mhm.
I know who that is.
Yeah.
I know that person.
Yeah.
I can see their homestead from my window if I was to open the blinds right here." And it
Wow.
was just on a shelf in a picture, and it was just one of the other 1870s, 1880s born person that fills those shelves in that photograph.
Mhm, mhm.
And
That's
I
wild.
just they and he wrote back and he's like, "Wow, what are the odds?" He's like,
Yep.
that was just we were going through the records, and I said, "Yeah, somebody knows all of them. Somebody
Mhm,
knows every name on that shelf." And I
mhm.
just happened to catch that last name on the urn that was spun at just the right angle. And he said, "Man, if I was a foot to the right when I took that photograph, that person would never get recognized."
Yep, yep.
And
That's why you're the right guy for the
now we're making
job.
plans to get them interred, and it's like, wow, it's amazing. Things
That's
like that
great.
happen by just getting in there and having the right people lined up, and you never know.
Yeah,
It's magic sometimes.
yeah. Yeah, it's like finding that document in an archive, but now you're actually finding a person, and you're
Yeah,
giving them you're breathing life back into them again by just
yeah,
talking about them. It's an
yeah.
amazing thing,
And
and
then to be, when you study these individuals to the level that we do, in a lot of cases, you start to feel like you know them in a
oh,
way,
yeah. Oh,
especially
yeah.
some of them that you've seen their photographs over and over and over, and you've seen their handwriting, and you've seen their clothing and this kind of stuff. So then when you literally get to stand in front of, it's their ashes, but to me, I don't, I'm not a paranormal guy at all, but to me, it's like, wow, this is them. This is, structurally molecular. This is the person in front of me. They
Mhm.
can't talk to me anymore because it's, obviously they're altered form and all that. But this is their molecules. This is them stand like right in front of me. I can I haven't gone in with them into the research, but I can't imagine what it's like to slide the box off the shelf and like blow the dust off of it after
Yeah,
100 years, and
yeah,
know the name on it, and like you're holding hands with them practically at that point. Um,
yeah. It's
and this is
amazing.
the last time that these Civil War veterans. This is the last time anyone will ever see them, because they go in, they're interred, and that's it. So this
Mhm.
is your last chance to sort of look them in the eye, so to speak, read their name, feel their like gravity. So I can't imagine, like in this picture, for her going, and you can see this is a different facility. It's very unkempt. This could be in an attic of one of the funeral homes. I don't even know where this photo was taken, but this looks like your grandfather's baseball card collection that's been
Yeah,
up in the attic with a bunch of junk in it.
yeah.
And so there's different in other funeral homes. It's different than this. Um, but it's all for them and for us. It's always an incredible discovery and like communion with these people in a way,
Mhm.
um, that's different than going to a cemetery. It's different than reading a book about them. It's different than seeing artifacts and uh, documents that have to do with them. Like this is physically them. Like if you spilled the urn, it's like, uh-oh, you got John so and so is on your pants and shoe now.
Mhm.
It's really
Yeah.
it can feel that real all of a sudden. So it's a different level of experience, I think.
Mhm.
And you've done, all the work that you've done on studying and living history with the burial details on battlefields, and the repatriation programs from the First and Second World War, that kind of stuff. It's like,
Right.
boy, this is the next nearest thing to that experience of,
Yeah.
interring someone all on or off the battlefield. It's
Yeah.
remarkable. And there have been cases, one in particular earlier this year, here in the Northwest, where someone was literally reinterred. A Civil War veteran was reinterred from a town that he had died in and he was buried in, and his family wanted him to come back to the town that bore his name and the rest of his family, his wife, his children, his grandchildren. And so they actually disinterred the remains and brought him in and laid him in the ground. Which I didn't go, but everybody said that was a incredibly moving thing to see someone from the Civil War going, taps being played and the casket being lowered into the ground. And now we get to do that with an infantry company sized group of men.
Yeah.
It's staggering.
Yeah, that's incredible. And perhaps when I put on here that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, it is so far. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, I guess in the
Yeah.
future, because you're seeing and they're witnessing this in this photo,
Yeah.
and you truly don't know the extent. But for us,
Yeah.
because we don't know, this could be it. This could be the once in a lifetime event where
Yeah.
someone's in the Pacific region of America, or even has the ability to fly there or whatever. It's something you'll want to witness.
Yeah, there's no guarantee that this is the last time something like this will happen.
Right.
But there's no guarantee the other way either. It's a 50-50 coin flip. Every time that these volunteers go into these boxes like this, which the opportunities for those get smaller with each time. It depends on any given cemetery manager or funeral home manager to not make the decision we want this room cleared out. These have been here for 100 years. They're going away now. That could happen to any of them at any time. The ones that have remains that age back to this point of the Civil War generation are getting few and far between. So they have been diligently working on these projects for years. And so they're trying to be as thorough as they can. Who knows? One could show up in Spokane or in Oregon or San Francisco or something that suddenly opens up a closet in a funeral home, and oh my God, here's a whole new trove of cremated remains that date back to that period. But I will say, as time goes on, the likelihood gets less and less and less that there are going to be substantial amounts. There will be more individually found. Absolutely. That they would all be brought together like this at this time, and then to be able to be interred together like this, that's what's really unique about it, because these could have all been brought out individually and quietly been placed one by one into the National Cemetery, but they try to do them in groups so they can, for efficiency of the paperwork, batch them to the Veterans Administration, but also for a cohesiveness for letting people celebrate them too. And so that's why this one is special, because 2 years ago there was 99 veterans of other conflicts and spouses. Next year there's going to be another whatever of First or Second World War veterans and spouses. But even the Missing in America people know that the veterans of the Civil War are exceedingly rare, even in their work. That's why this is, because there is a Missing in America project going in New York and Tennessee and Nevada and everywhere, but they're not finding what they're finding here. That's just the reality. And each one that gets inventoried, that's the last one. We'll eventually go to the literal last one, and there won't be any left.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I really like this shot because you can almost make out the name tags, and that really is intriguing to me. Just being like, okay, I want to read every one of these.
The one that was readable, I had to blur out. There was one you could actually see the name on. But and you can see the difference in periods. You can see the difference in materials. You can see the difference in, and that almost tells you a little bit about the story of how and when they died. Is simply what kind of vessel are they in? There's one behind a board there that has a pretty elaborate like white urn on a little pedestal, and then there's one right behind him. It's just in a cardboard box.
Yeah.
Why is that different? What was their intent? Was one just kind of like, wow, they need to put the ashes somewhere, they've got a standard box that they go in, but maybe somebody had plans for that white urn, or maybe they just paid for temporary storage, and then the kids moved away and they never came back to get them, or life got busy and you didn't, you never thought about it. Who knows why they get left behind? But that there's such an assortment, there's an individual reason that each and every one of them were left behind, in addition to their individual stories.
Right.
And some of them are contractual. Like there are some that will never leave because they signed, when they were cremated in 1921, they signed a contract with the funeral home for perpetual care. So the perpetual care is either with a burial plot and a headstone, or it's in a niche in a mausoleum or something, or it might be in a quote storage facility where they're cared for, but they don't have to pay the premium to be in a space where people can come up and put flowers.
Right.
So those have to, by law, have to stay where they are. So there's some in that case that are probably of the Civil War generation that will never come out because they can't. That's the cemetery is agreed to care for them privately, so to speak, for until the sun burns out.
Yeah, it's looking at these photos really brings home to me how much we study these, at least for the soldiers, we study these men and the women too. We read their letters to their spouses and such off to war, or whomever it may be. We read about them so much. We go and we walk the battlefields and stuff like that, but we're still disconnected from this part.
Oh,
yeah. Where it's like, okay, you shut the book, you move on to the next thing, and there's this just weird disconnect where we don't want our heroes or the people we look up to be found like this. It's not in a disrespectful way that they're there. They're taken care of. They weren't tossed aside. They weren't thrown out. We have to think of it that way too. But we don't expect to see them on a shelf. And I think that really comes around to the idea of our own mortality in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it makes you take care for those things, like, or maybe you don't. Like, different people have different attitudes. I personally couldn't care less after I'm not here to see it, so whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot of these guys had that attitude too, men and women, but it's you don't. Yeah, you're right. You don't like to see it, but it's not a disrespectful thing that they've been kept this way. It's that, if there's any disrespect to be found, and I don't think any of it's intentional. Perhaps it was like, screw, I hate my mother-in-law, she can rot on that shelf. There's got to be some of that for sure,
Right.
somewhere along the line. But I think a lot of it's just a consequence of the world moving on after people are no longer here, and the world keeps turning and things go on, and eventually you have to move on from these things, and the world can just as easily forget you. And you could have the biggest monument in the cemetery, and if nobody comes to visit it, it doesn't matter any more than being in a box on a shelf in the storage room. It's all about, the people still caring to do something for you. Because you go to these big historic cemeteries, you go to Gettysburg National Cemetery or something, and they're not forgotten because they're displayed public. Their headstones are shown publicly, so you view them as the whole. But how many people go to Fredericksburg and go up to an individual headstone and really contemplate who was Charles F. Smith, who died May 6th, 1864? What was his sister's name? What did his grandchildren do for a living? Like, you don't ask that question there either. But in this kind of space, you're confronted with that question. It's because you got to go, oh my God, they forgot him. Who was he? And it forces it on you a little bit more than the places that are supposedly remembered. That they're packaged differently, so to speak. And this, boy, when you see somebody's name on a box on a shelf, it hits you like, wow, I gotta I gotta confront this and who is this person?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really a great way of putting it, Richard. The when people go to your site and they
Mhm.
go to civilwarseattle.com/memorial,
Yeah.
what kind of information are they going to find there to assist with this effort, be a part of the effort? What are they going to find?
Yeah, so what that page is, and it just recently went up because we finally set the schedule for the event. So the information on the website is primarily about the memorial service. Now, this is really a 2-day event, and what I'm involved in personally, and why I'm speaking about this stuff, is the aspect that I am, really have the permission or authority to speak on, is the memorial service on the first day. So that's August 21st, and that's the event in Seattle. And I'll get into that in just a second. And then the second day is August 22nd, and that's the actual day of inurnment or interment in the National Cemetery, which is in Kent, Washington, which is it's in King County. It's about 20 miles or so south of downtown Seattle. It's not far. Um, but you do have to specify that they're not being interned in Seattle. It's actually the location of the cemetery is there. So that will be, I believe it's 12:30 in the afternoon is the start time for that. So that will be all 60 or so. And that list is still, there's still some paperwork that's got to go through. So if you show up and there's 29 veterans or there's 31 spouses and it's because there's some stuff with the government and recognizing status and things. But on that day, the 30 veterans and the 31 spouses are scheduled to be interned, and so there will be an hour of the formal military burial by the United States Army with honors, with flag folding, with, I think there's a bell that's rung as their names are read out and they're individually placed. Preceding that, I believe, that's why it's because originally it was 1 o'clock and now it's 12:30. There will be a ceremony performed by the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War organization, and they have the responsibility of performing the updated sort of contextual version of the Grand Army of the Republic burial ceremony. So unlike a headstone dedication, which is a memorial service, and there is a Sons of Union Veterans ceremony that accompanies an event like that, where the person's in the ground and they've been either unmarked or a headstone's been replaced and you get a new one. There's a ceremony that goes alongside that. This is different. This is the actual Grand Army burial service that they are replicating as best they can, or in the way that they do it. And I have not seen this before. They've come to headstone dedications that I've been at, and I've seen that, and it's wonderful. And the attendees, it's very moving. It's very powerful what they do. But this one is really giving the veterans the Grand Army burial ceremony that they didn't have, that most of the veterans that are buried or in this area did receive. Now, many of those that are in this ceremony had a funeral, but they didn't have a burial ceremony. And the Grand Army had two different things that were performed. So if you're interested in this and you're going to be here, prioritize doing that as well. Going to the cemetery, seeing what the Sons of Veterans do, that entire ceremony. They're coming from all over the country, Sons of Veterans, for that part of it, as well as being present for the memorial service. So I don't want to miss out on that side of things, because I'm not involved in the organization of that. I will be there as a spectator, just like everyone else for that day. With a chest full of emotion, watching these guys get placed, and their wives get placed, and seeing them for the last time before that earth goes over them and they are sealed. So that's going to be a powerful thing. So that's August 22nd. August 21st, and that's what the information on my page today is about, is a day-long memorial service for the veterans. So it's going to run, as of now, we have it scheduled that it'll be open from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. in the afternoon. And Evergreen Washelli Cemetery is hosting. They have a wonderful, large tribute center where the service will be held in this room. All the veterans will be in the room together. You can go in all day long and spend time with them. You can go and see the urns and see those boxes on the shelf and read those names individually and stand in front of them, the same as the Missing in America researchers do when they're in the facilities. You'll have that opportunity to spend the time and kind of take in that moment. You won't have to just see them at a distance during the service and then leave. It's going to be open for people to come in and individually experience this moment, and spend time with them in the way that you see fit. Sit for an hour if you want. Come just walk by and read the names if you want. It's up to you. It'll be open for the public to get what you want out of it. It's not that will not be dictated how much time you spend or how you spend that time in the room with these Civil War soldiers and the wives of these Civil War soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
In addition, outside there will be an adjacent space that'll have some refreshments and stuff, so you can take a break and chat with people. And then another adjacent space as you come into the Tribute Center is going to have an exhibit that I am curating and putting together and organizing that tells you could consider it a pop-up museum. So it's a large space for that day, which will be full of artifacts and exhibits and interpretive material to read that you can walk through, and you can learn some of the stories of the veterans included in the service, but moreover, the story of the thousands and thousands of veterans that called this area home, why they're important, why our connections, why I do what I do. It's going to be a short version of that, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Why are there veterans here? Why do Seattleites or Washingtonians care about the Civil War? It happened way over there, all that kind of thing. That will all be explained for anyone that could walk off the street and come into that space and see uniforms and artifacts from the war, artifacts and items from the veterans themselves here in Seattle. You can look at them and you can see them. It won't be very specific to the Grand Army of this area and the veterans of this area. And so, like I said, it'll be just a compact one-day museum that you'll be able to walk through as if you would go to a visitor center museum at a state park battlefield. Imagine that. You get a understanding of the ground and the battle that you're going out to look at. This will be the same thing. You'll come in, you can take in the story of veterans in Seattle, our historical connections to the war, and then go in and share the air with the veterans themselves for that one last day before they go into the ground or into the niches or however they're going to be placed. I'm not even sure where in Tacoma Cemetery they're going to go. It's all going to, I'm going to be just like anybody else that day, and just, boy, let me see what happens. Let me just be in this moment and not be writing a schedule or organizing anything. I want to just be there that day.
Right.
But I'm going to take every second of the day before, boy, to soak it in. Let me tell you.
Yeah, that would be one of those days. Both days for me would be one of those days where the phone stays in the pocket. I don't want anything between me and what is happening. It'll be tough to do because you want to share it with the world and you want to let people know. But as someone who can't be there physically, I hope a lot of photos are taken. But at the same time, I hope that people really ingest and consume what they're seeing.
Yeah, I think there's lots of people that have that responsibility that will be coming to film and to photograph, and there's going to be a ton of media there. You'll see it on the news, likely. I don't know how far spread the markets are going to hear this story, but it will be covered widely. I can guarantee you that. I know the process going behind that, the public relations work on this, and have been involved in this, and I know the stories. That's why this is the first day we're really talking about it, because it's gonna. Parking brake is coming off, and I think this will be a story that will be easy to find, and photos and images will be easy to find. I do have a responsibility as my role in facilitating an understanding of who these men were, that day. I won't be out with my phone so much, but I will be there as a docent, so to speak, in the museum, answering questions, explaining, teaching, evangelizing, really, for for these guys, dispelling a lot of common misconceptions too, because people had there are some 2 or 3 things that everybody says about Civil War veterans in the West that are just not quite how it was. And
Mm.
so I hope that I can contribute to that, and just guide people. I'm just going to be there, like a park ranger is at the National Battlefield Park Visitor Center, there to just, or licensed battlefield guide. Like that's going to be my role, I
Mhm.
think, is to just share. And I'll get my time privately and with the Missing in America people and funeral home people the night before, when we're setting up, the day, maybe after, during the ceremony, when I get my allotted spot that they've given me to speak at the ceremony with these men just to my right. Like
Mm.
that's going to be something, you
Yeah.
know. And I'll tell you, it's going to be hard to keep it together.
Mhm.
It's not often for me that way, but this is everything I do is about sharing this legacy. And then here I get to look over and say, we're doing this for you, for you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
Before you go, let's all
Yeah.
say, hang out here for a minute.
Right.
So that's, coming face to face with what I spend all my work doing is going to be intense. So I'm going to try and keep the phone in the pocket as much as I can and turn that over to people. Fortunately, the cemetery, Dignity Memorial, is going to live stream the event, the service,
Great.
through their website. So I'm not going to fuss with that.
Mhm.
If you're learning about it from me, I'd like you to be there in person, or just follow the link to the Washelli thing on the day of. I don't want to be running a live stream or anything like that.
Right.
I'm off the grid that day for anything but in-person communication.
Yeah.
I may take more pictures the day after. Lord knows there's going to be a lot of pictures of the Sons of Veterans ceremony and stuff on Civil War Seattle. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Uh, all, with all their Blue Suns uniforms and stuff. I will make sure everybody sees that, because that won't be live streamed.
Mhm.
I'm going to be a visitor that day.
Mhm.
But on the 21st, I will be there as the voice for the veterans in the
Yeah.
room. That's what I intend to do.
Yeah. That's great.
Maybe eat a donut in the reception room at some point, so it'll black
Yeah.
out from talking,
Yeah.
all the lack of oxygen from running my mouth, because obviously I'm a talkative dude, and you put
Yeah.
me in a room with 30 Civil War veterans and let me talk about them all day.
Yeah.
Somebody bring me cough drops and tea and
Yeah, you have to keep your sugar up
yeah,
and, keep going.
yeah,
Through that link also, Richard, I do wanna point out that, there is information for those who want to,
yeah.
purchase flowers and a message for the troops or the spouses.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a very, very important part of this. And this is where folks like you come in, is helping us get this out to the Civil War and history community at large.
Mhm.
If you're watching this, please share this with other people you think may be interested, whether it's the link or end this page, live stream, anything that you see about this, because this is intended, like I said at the beginning, off the top, for everyone. And it's
Mhm.
impractical for people to fly to Seattle and pay for the travel to come here during peak tourist season and all of that to be here for an afternoon. And it's just not feasible. But I want everybody to have the chance to pay tribute. And internally, we've referred to this as flowers at the funeral, in our discussions with the funeral home and so on. And so the idea that Evergreen, Washelli, and Dignity have had is to streamline the ability for people to send flowers, to be present, make this like a Grand Army funeral was. Grand Army Memorial Day, cover them over with flowers, that famous poem and song and phrase that is so wedded to that exact practice of flowers on graves of the dead of the Civil War. That's where it
Mhm.
starts, as a cultural practice. We get one more chance to do it like they did back in those days, possibly, probably. So if you can, what they've done is they've organized 5 options of different prices, for different budgets, whether you're an individual, you're an organization, a museum, a historical society, a round table, a reenacting group, a church from a community that just wants to say, that has some enthusiastic history fans, just any person, you, John, me, anybody could order flowers. They'll be there, but not just flowers. They will be with a printed message, so you could put whatever personal message. If you want to say my great grandfather was in a Wisconsin regiment, and I wasn't able to be at his funeral, so I'm doing my part now. Or the citizens of Wisconsin say thank you, or the citizens of New Jersey say thank you, or the Westwood Historical Society says thank you to the Civil War service of whatever. You'll get a message that's printed, and then you'll also be able to get a QR code. And this comes from the cemetery themselves. They want equity in this process. So if you or an organization or an individual have a website, or you, the tattooed historian, you get your message, flower arrangement, and a QR code. So people that are visiting, that are spending the time to go one by one and read these messages, can see who they're coming from. So it's not anonymous. You're not just sending flowers, that it will be able to tie back to those that we know can't physically be here. But if, say the Seminary Ridge Museum at Gettysburg or some historical society does their part, you will be recognized for your contribution with the visitors who are there in person as well. So you're not just throwing $500 or $200 out to some flowers that we'll never see again. That we want it to be known as to who's involved with this paying tribute, no matter where you're at. You could be in England or in Bangladesh, and you get just the same voice in the room as any of us do. So I like to make sure that people know that you can have something to say, and you can let people know who said it. We can look at who's the tattooed historian. Why is he saying thank you to these guys? Let's see who he was. Why is this historical society or so on, national parks site, whatever it is, you get that option with it.
Right. That's great. And as Richard says, definitely share that out, because we know a lot of reenactment units are still out there. We know a lot of museums haven't heard quite yet what is going on. Nonprofits who are in preservation or doing something with an archive or whatever, get it out there to everyone who's involved in this part of history and the history field in general. Archives, get it out there, because you're going to want to have the ability to say thank you, and also to let everyone know why your museum is important or whatever else as well. So you're helping to show how important these people were, while saying, hey, we are invested in making sure that these kinds of folks, their stories are never forgotten. So it's a huge opportunity for everyone to show their respect.
And to unify us as a history community, whether it's Civil War or it's local history or whatever, and particularly, I think there's some poignance in the example of a collective unity historically towards something, when Lord knows things are divisive. I'll just say that it's an opportunity for, no matter where you're at or who you're from, that we all, as students of the Civil War or students of history, or just armchair people interested in history movies or whatever, that we all get to just be in that same place for that same intent, for that same moment, and do this together. And this is the primary focus of this, of course, is for the veterans and the women who supported them, who are in the room. The second focus of this is that this is for all of us. And this comes from the people that are hosting the event. From the first meeting I had with them, is that they said, this is not for us. This is not for Civil War Seattle. This is not for Missing in America. This is not for the Sons of Union Veterans or the Freedom Riders or the American Legion or anybody who's involved. This is for everyone. And that's why I really try to emphasize, please spread the word about it as much as you can. Because as we talked about, it may not, but this may be and is likely to be the very last time something like this happens in our lifetimes. It could happen again next week. I don't know. Somebody could say, like, hey, I got a whole grocery cart full of urns that I found in a closet in a building. That could totally happen. but in such an organized and structured way, and knowing that this hasn't happened for the past 115 years, it's taken that long for this to happen. The likelihood of it happening again in 5 years or 10 years or 30 years are pretty much non-existent. And I'll throw it in an algorithm and say, what are the odds of this happening again? It didn't happen yet. Yeah. So if this was going to happen, it would have happened in 1950 and 60 and 80 and 1995 and 2001. It didn't. It took from 1900 until 2024 to even happen. So I don't anticipate this happens again, honestly. So
yeah, and I have a feeling not only will people want to have flowers and a message and things like that, I have a feeling there's going to be quite a few in our field of study who will now be reaching out to their local, especially on the West Coast, to their local funeral homes and wherever, and asking, are we sure we don't have something similar here? Who needs a proper burial, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
And maybe this will create, something outside of this particular event to ensure that others get the notoriety that they should get as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say if you are watching this from somewhere else, look up the Missing in America Project in your state and contact them, because they have a structure in place for negotiating these kind of things, of dealing with the legalities of custody of remains from someone who's passed away, and next of kin process, and then turning them over to federal governments or local governments, all that stuff. It's quite complex. So I encourage people to go to that organization. That organization also would love the support and the volunteers. Like, if you want to do this kind of stuff, you love doing genealogical research, get involved with Missing in America and contribute, because they rely on the volunteers and amateur genealogists for the bulk of this work. Like, we don't find out who they are without people doing the volunteer work. It's not you don't get hired to sit on Family Search or Ancestry all day verifying death certificates. Like, that's a passion project for people. And if there is going to be a next one, it's going to require a generation of people to come behind the generation of people that are doing that work and keep doing it and keep looking and doing that stuff. Because these people, you'll notice, all of us, you excluded, but most of us involved in this thing have a lot of gray hair, and we're not getting younger. So if there's work to be done, if there are more remains to be found 30 years from now, it's going to take people picking up the mantle and doing that work in the future. So yeah, if you're inspired by this, get involved for sure, and be the next generation of that process, and build those relationships with people in funeral homes. And don't just go in and say, hey, I want to look around. Because then the padlock will go on the door.
Yeah.
The more you say, I'm entitled to be here, the less likely you'll have, and the more likely that these ashes all get dumped in a box together and thrown in the river. Right. You have to be careful and diplomatic and follow legal precedent about doing these kind of things. I would very much emphasize that, because if you go in like a bull in a china shop, you'll ruin it for everybody. And then us and the veterans themselves, it'll never pan out. So yeah, look up Missing in America, see what they do. I'm sure there's other organizations that do similar things. If they're not active in your area, you can find somebody, or you can maybe reach out, start one in the area of Southern California you live in, or in Kentucky or something. They need people to get involved. So there's an onboarding process and legal stuff and all that, but if you want to be a volunteer with it and drive this ahead, you can do it in your town too. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone, please go to civilwarseattle.com/memorial. It is in the chat. There's a link in the chat multiple times on YouTube and on Facebook. Sorry to everyone on LinkedIn. I'm not allowed to put things in the chat through StreamYard. We'll go over that with them later. I don't know what's going on. Just some kind of hiccup in the system. But please go to that website and make sure you just bookmark civilwarseattle.com, but go to /memorial and get more information on all of this.
It has information, but it also has links too.
Okay.
So you can go to the Missing in America Project website. You can go to Dignity Memorial's website. You can go to my website. It's all linked up. So if you just go to that website, that's right
Yeah.
there, the Civil War Seattle/Memorial, then you'll get linked out to everything that we've talked about tonight. Not just my website, but schedule, dates, details, all the flower information with the different options and photographs, who to contact,
Mhm.
phone numbers, emails, websites. It's all there. It's one page that has all the information you need.
Yeah, that's one-stop shop. That's what we need. We need information all in one place. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Please share out this video or share out that website to people who need to know this, and there are plenty of them who
Yeah.
need to know what is going on with this, so that we can get as much notoriety for these men and women as
Yes.
possible. Uh,
Absolutely.
Please also like the live if you would, because that drives it up into the algorithm and we can get more eyes on this.
Indeed.
Little shameless self promotion there, but it is good for getting this out there for
Yeah.
people. And
Makes a difference,
absolutely,
actually.
yeah, and absolutely, just at least put out civilwarseattle.com/memorial to everyone with a reason why they should go to it, and everyone should know the reason now
Yeah.
who's been watching. Any last words, Richard, before we call it a night?
Yeah, I guess first of all, thanks for helping start getting the word out about this.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to come on and talk about this tonight. I've been keeping this quiet for a long time, so it's nice to finally kind of break this break the surface and come up for air.
Yeah.
Just as I have to go back underwater to finish off the museum or the exhibit displays for the next 3.5 or 4 weeks. But my final words again was just to echo what you just said, and to say that this is our chance for everybody to enjoy this moment and come together, to remember these men who we are so passionate about what that generation did.
Mhm.
There's in this group, there's men who are at Gettysburg and men who marched to the sea with Sherman, who were in Andersonville prison. Stuff that's we're familiar and passionate about, and here they are. These are the men that we read about, and we get one last chance to say goodbye to them. And I think
Mhm.
the more people that we can get to share in that experience, the better, and it's the better that we can do for them. That they've been forgotten for 120 or 110 years, and now that we get the chance to make right that oversight, let's really do it. Let's really go all out as much as we can to make up for lost time. A century on a shelf. I think we have a little bit of a debt that's built up to them for that I think we should be repaying, and I think that's what I want to encourage.
Mhm.
And again, thank you, and thanks everybody for sharing this and visiting the site, and just spread the word. You don't have to share a link or anything, as much as you just tell somebody about it and they can Google it, and or search it on Facebook, and you'll get this video, and you'll get the posts on John's page. You'll get stuff on my page. You'll get stuff from other places. You'll get stuff from news outlets. Just know that this is happening. Oh my God,
Mhm.
30 veterans of the Civil War, 30 soldiers of the Civil War are going to be buried in 2024. Just pass that around. That's all we need
Mhm.
to get
Mhm.
started, and let the process go from there. You'll find a way to find out. So yeah, talk about it, share it, do all that, but just talk about it. Tell your friends,
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
your uncle who's got Civil War books.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I want to just showcase this one more time to prove my point. Uh, in that photo, there's no competition there. They're not arguing over position or likes or followers or anything like that. Okay. This is a rising tide lifts all boats moment. And I want everyone to realize that. I had the honor and privilege of helping to break the news to my followers and to anyone else who may be watching this. And I thank you, Richard, for that very, very much. It means a great deal to me. And I'm looking forward to promoting this a hell of a lot in the next few weeks as we're going through time. But I think far too often, as people who are involved in knowledge mobilization, if you will, as we call it in the scholarly way, we want to get the
Mhm.
information out, we want to get the knowledge out, and we do it through social media and other means. Uh, there are times when people, get in competition and say, well, I want more followers, I want more likes, or whatever else. This is what it's about, people. And
Yeah.
that's why I do what I do. That's why Richard does what he does. Maybe that's why you do what you do. And I really think this needs to come across to everyone. This, as Richard said, is a moment for all of us to work together, because in this moment it's not about us. It's about these people up here in this photograph. And that's bigger than we are. This moment is bigger than we are, and we need everyone to come together and help lift that tide, because there will be more of these, but maybe not in this quantity. But there'll be more that comes out of the woodwork that whether it's 30 or 3, they
Mhm.
need this respect and honor and privilege to be put to rest the way they wish to be, or the way they should be, honored and laid to rest, I should say.
Mm.
And this is a big moment for all of us in the history field to be able to come together. And even if we have disagreements, put them aside. And because, like I said, it's about them, and it should always be about them, because their stories allow us to do what we do. And this is our moment to prove it. So please share out as much as you can, the word in whichever manner you want to share the word. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not here to get more followers. I'm not here to get more likes. I'm here to get the word out.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, civilwarseattle.com/memorial. Share out this live stream. Just share out when you see news stories coming out, share them out, because it's all about these folks up here, and it should always be about those folks. No one owes us anything,
Mhm.
but we owe them something, and this is their moment. So please, make sure that you help out in that way, and always remember that we are students of history, and it's because of those folks up there in that photograph that we do what we do.
And then we
So
get to do what we do.
we get to do what we do, and we get the honor and privilege to do what we do and put our heads down at night knowing that we've tried our best. Even
Yeah.
if we come up short sometimes,
Yeah.
we've tried our best, and we'll do better tomorrow. And that's the way I have to look at it, and I know Richard feels the same way.
Mhm.
I don't speak for him, but I know he and I
Yeah.
have that kind of same mentality.
Yeah.
And this is a moment where we really can allow ourselves to showcase that. Whether you can afford to have flowers there or not, what you can afford to do is freely share out information
Mhm.
for that. And so please don't think that you're hemmed in or anything like that to a certain thing. Do as much as you can in this moment. And I think that's a way to thank them in general, is to say, hey, I want everyone to know about this because this
Yeah.
is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like we were saying that they've they've been on those shelves for 100 plus years, and so
Mhm.
make their names, make everybody hear their names when
Yeah.
the time comes. Uh, that's
Yeah.
that's the best thing we can do.
And I'm going to be pushing for my home state of Pennsylvania to do something, because I see that we have a Pennsylvanian, at least one, in this list. So if you're from any of those states too, and you will make sure your state does something, or some
Yeah.
organization your state does something and thanks them for all Pennsylvanians,
Yeah.
or Mainers, or whoever it may be, you know what to do.
Yeah.
So
And
get the
those,
word out.
I will say, a last little postscript to this
Mhm.
is that those names will be announced when when the legalities are fully cleared.
Yeah.
Um, everybody will know who's there. This is not a secret. It's not going to be a jack in the box the last second. Here's who's in the room.
Right.
Uh, it's just there's it's still an ongoing paperwork process with a lot of this, and we're still 5 weeks out almost. So that's why I'm a little cagey about it, or cryptic, but it's a requirement of this. But it won't be secret forever. But just know that this is happening, and then yes, you will find out who from your state is there what they did, what their story was, as the time draws closer.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Richard, for allowing me to help out with
Well,
breaking
thank
the
you.
news to everyone. It really means a lot to me that you trusted me to be one of the first to get this out to a social media audience. It really does mean a lot.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to work with you as always, and hopefully, as we draw nearer to this, we'll uh, get to get into more specifics about it and stuff as we get closer. That'll be really fun. I look
I'm
forward to
sure there's
that.
plenty more posts to come about,
Yeah,
who
yeah.
we're
You
who we're
you'll be
discussing.
hearing about this all 24 hours a day for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you to everyone who has come in and out through the last hour and 15 minutes. I know a lot of you have, because I've seen the numbers go up and down and up and down. That means we're getting a lot of footprints coming through the hallway here, if you will, of social media. So thank you to everyone who has done that. Thank you to everyone
Yeah,
who's
thank
liked the
you.
live
Yeah,
to try to help us get up there algorithmically, so more people hear about this. It really means a lot to us, and to everyone involved there in Seattle and in Washington. It really means a lot to them, I'm sure, because they want to get the word out to you as well. And let all your friends know, let everybody in your area know you got a local historical society and you hang out and have coffee. Now's the time to let them know. Please share freely, share it out. And there's going to be more to come on this special breaking news. I got to use the news alert. I was very happy about that. That's awesome. I don't usually get to break news,
yeah,
but I was so thrilled to break this kind of news. So
yeah. This is
thank
great.
you again,
Great thing.
everybody, for being here on all the channels that we could be on. We hope you have a fantastic evening. Bookmark all the sites. Get ready for more information, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Take care. Good night, guys.